every single life matters.
The primary responsibility of government, first of all, which is security.
We bank mostly on intervention rather than prevention.
Democracy is a government where power resides with the people.
Hello and a very warm welcome to you. This is You.Gov. It's all about you and the government. We'll always like to encourage you to actually carry out your role in the society. You have your role to play. And of course, we know that government has their responsibility to you as well. So that is why we keep you informed in a balanced manner. I am Itohan Oloma-Agbodo. When we return from this break, we'll tell you what we'll be talking about. Stay with us.
It's 3,653 days snowballed into 10 years of victories, 10 years of impact, 10 years of beauty, 10 years of excellence, and 10 years of successes. Thank you, our dear esteemed partners. You made the years worth its while. For your unflinching support, your seeds of love, for standing with us through and through. Thank you. It's our festival of vibes.
This week on EduBox, we are taking a look at the impact of lockdown on businesses and persons in Nigeria. A lot of people complained that the closure of businesses grossly affected their livelihood, and some others claimed palliatives introduced by the government never got to them. Let's go to the streets now to hear as Nigerians voice concerns over economic impact of lockdown.
Actually, what I say about it is that our government do not really know where to start from and what to do, because this pandemic is not just in this country alone, it's all over. And now you said that you are using the lockdown. Has it reduced? Rather than getting reduced, it's getting the figures are getting up every day, and now we are using the lockdown. But the reason why they have to do that is because they have not been able to do any palliative for the citizens, and that's why they have to do this. But then we're going to see a lot of this. What I would have advised is that if government had done a proper palliative, we should still be indoor by now. But then the means of livelihood of people are depending on, a lot of people depend on their daily living. Even the market now, the purpose is being defeated. Because now they are closing by 3 o'clock. Look at them sitting down. None of them, some people will not even see customers till that 3 o'clock. So what's the essence of the ease for the lockdown? It's not really actually necessary. That's what I just see. What I just see is that this country is not going anywhere. Because looking at it normally, if we look at what it's even operating in other climes, they are giving their citizens a reason to stay at home. And these citizens are still even angry that they don't want to stay at home. Not talk less of Nigeria, that we are not giving anybody anything. And you tell them to stay at home. And a lot of people are being killed by hunger. But they are not reporting that. But they are reporting cases of coronavirus. I think it's just very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate.
You die but once. They go outside to carry koro with their money. They come back to Nigeria, start suffering us. Say we should stay home for koro. They can't give us 10 kobo for feeding. Now they say market people should stop selling. And workers, they are giving them money, paying their salary. They are not giving us anything. Do they remember that we are citizens? And they say this is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Who are the people? They are governor. They are doing themselves. They like themselves. They take care of themselves. They forget about us, the citizens, doing nothing. And they know they say they give us money from America. They did not give anybody. Armed robber, they are robbing poor people. Nothing. So this is bad. It's bad for the country. That is all I have to say. Tell them, make sure they see it. Make sure, because I am a widow, no husband, nobody, and nobody is taking care of us. And now I am dying for hungry. That is all what I want to tell them.
welcome back. This is still You.Gov. We did tell you that a lot of people have been complaining about the economic impact of the lockdown, and in our previous episode we've also mentioned the fact that the lockdown is biting hard on a lot of people, and this time we're joined by someone who will be shedding light into what the government is doing. Remember, You.Gov is all about you and the government, and he is none other than Afolabi Imoukhuede. Afolabi Imoukhuede is the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Job Creation and Youth Development. And that is a plus for the youth in this country, because we've been saying the youth should be more involved in politics. And this is a living testimony that we have youth in government. You're welcome to You.Gov.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. So, the lockdown, economics, job creation, and everything. First of all, your general reaction to all that has been going on, and of course, you've been hearing a lot of Nigerians complaining. Give us your general reaction first as a Nigerian.
Well, I think the first point is to really empathize with ourselves, every one of us, because there's no one that is immune from this COVID-19 pandemic worldwide. So I think that's the first thing. So we must really empathize with ourselves, with every part of the economy. I mean, look at, and it's a global thing. I mean, look at the hospitality sector, look at the aviation sector. Look, there's no sector you pick that is not being hit. I mean, when you look at, even for us here in Nigeria, our ugly realities have come up to the fore. And I think one of the first things is that we are not an oil-rich country. That's something that, yes, that's what, and it's something that the then CBN governor, Emir Sanusi, had always tried to tell us since about 2012, you know, that we're not an oil-rich country. Yes, we do have oil, but if you divide by our population, we are not an oil-rich country. And in so many ways, we have carried on that way. But now these realities have come to bite, because you then have this issue as you have the pandemic and everyone is asked to stay at home to be able to curtail the transfer of the virus. And but then again, you stay at home, what do you really stay at home to get? Particularly our own population, where a larger percentage of our population are in the day-to-day earning, the informal sector, where they earn day-to-day on jobs, whether on construction sites, whether in their daily markets and things like that. So how do you really keep, yes, even transportation. So how do you really keep up with your limited earnings, as it were, already before COVID? So it's a tough situation, and I think the president, no other senior person than the president himself, has expressed this in every of his speeches in this era, to say that yes, we do hear and we do understand the challenges that everyone is facing. However, unfortunately, because we are not rich, we're not a rich country, we are not able to do what other richer countries have done, which is being able to say, okay, in UK, for example, 80% of wages, employment wages are being borne by government. In many other climes, you see...
but just to butt in a bit, talking about the fact that we're not rich, in terms of the fact that other countries, they had packages to kind of buffer the impact of the lockdown. Some of these countries, they didn't... let's go back to Nigeria. A lot of people, a lot of organizations donated funds during the initial period of the announcements of the pandemic, and several funds from the bank, from individuals as well. So how then can the government say we're not rich enough to at least support people during this?
So there are two things we need to bear in mind. One, the funds that were donated by the private sector is being managed by what you call COVID. So that's a coalition against COVID-19, private sector, and that is purely managed, and the accountability is between CBN and some appointed private sector leaders, for which I know the Access Bank MD and a few others are the arrowheads. So how they have chosen, my last understanding from how they want to invest that money, is to invest it in infrastructure, healthcare related infrastructure, not in palliatives. They did mention that yes, they may need to consider that, but it's like a third level priority. The first priority is to say, okay, how do we healthcare infrastructure, testing, increasing the number of testings, and you can begin to see some of those results. Now you see that testing has increased, which is why we also are having more reported cases. So I know in the priority from COVID, I'm not speaking for them, I'm not authorized in any way, I don't even have any information to speak for them, but from what I read in public press release, it was going to be health-related infrastructure, testing, and testing and research, and then last but not the least, third priority would be some form of palliatives. So that, but the second bit now is the federal government announcing its palliatives. Now, the thing also is when you then look at the demography, the federal government obviously chose to focus on the bottom of the pyramid. And not on everybody, because that's why I say we are not a rich country. If it's a rich country, all that the government needs to do is to say, okay, we will work with employers of labor, we will work with the different associations, whether it's NURT and all that, and be able to ensure that money gets into your account or money gets to your pocket, what have you, and then you sit at home, just like we saw in different parts of the country, different parts of the world. I mean, so these vulnerable youths, we created that program, that's Empower. The same program was also created for vulnerable poor people, poor women in our communities, aged, the poor, the widows, the very vulnerable ones. That's a conditional cash transfer. With the World Bank also supports us with their bachelor loot. That's where they divert the money to.
Is that not the program that all we were hearing about was the trader money and...
So that's the Government Enterprise Empowerment Program. Again, that one is also designed because there is a general balance, lack of access to capital. You want to start a business, you say access to credit, access to capital is the typical concerns. There have been research upon research that have come out. So we say, okay, as much as the government continues to respond, to access to capital, whether through Bank of Industry, whether through Nigerian Industrial Development Bank, Development Bank of Nigeria, and all these other platforms, we still say that there are still certain people in our society they are still not able to benefit because in their own case, they are looking for 50,000. They are looking for 10,000.
Bank of Industry, agricultural banks.
But when you look at Bank of Industry, agricultural banks, their products will still be millions. Oh, you want 3 million and above. You want 5 million and above. We're talking about people that all they need is 10,000 naira. We're talking about people that all they need is 50,000. That's what the Government Enterprise Empowerment Program was about. But then we still then said, Bank of Industry, you have been created to create access to industry. Loans for industry, still manage this. We know it's not the normal people you cater for. You normally cater from here, there. Now we're asking you manage for people from the floor, even up to the level where you used to be. The goal is grow them in their business. Let them also be able to grow to the point where they can actually now come to Bank of Industry. So that's the JEEP program. So the various names were just names of products. It's a JEEP program, but trader money was for those who all they need is no more than 10,000 naira to transform their livelihood. Market money is for those who what they need is between 50,000 to 100,000. While farmer money is for those who needed about 300,000 in their farms, community farms. And there are different options. So to answer your question about how do people know about this program, I think awareness is part of what you're doing. Now, how do you benefit when you go to Bank of Industry, for example, or you type or you go on the website of the Government Enterprise Empowerment Program or BOI/JEEP, you will get all the information because we tend to work with all the market cooperatives to be able to bring them in. And I think the last but not the least was the school feeding program that was designed not only for the children, to feed the children in school, 1 meal a day, but also to ensure that the cooks are the rural community women, that the ones that were engaged by the states to cook the food, and the food was not imported from any state or any country, but from the local farms in that community. So you find out that it was designed in such a way that the father in the home is the one planting is growing the crop. The mother in the home in that community is the one cooking the food, and the children in the home in that community is the one benefiting in the public primary school, primary 1 to 3. So these were all programs that were designed for the vulnerable, the bottom of the pyramid, to give them a foot in the door, and also at least maybe what I would like to call the step to start climbing on the ladder of prosperity. Now, that's what any responsible government should do, whether you have a pandemic or not. Now, one of the things we did differently as well was to ensure, in order to ensure meritocracy and transparency, we used a lot of data gathering. So for the graduates, unemployed graduates, young people, you couldn't give us an excuse that you can't use internet or whatever. When
computer.
Everybody has Facebook, even the one selling bread is doing Facebooking on the road. So we made sure that the only way you can access that portal is through the internet. And that way we got it, we did selection, it was transparent. You will hear the testimonies of the 500,000 who are in the program now, comprising batch A and batch B, say to you, we didn't know anybody, and we got into a program. So with the school children as well, how we got the cooks and all that, it was the state government that worked with our office in Abuja to nominate the cooks and things like that through an application process as well. Even their monies are paid to their bank accounts. Every cook in the school feeding program has a BVN regulated bank account, and that's how they get their money. They pay them on a weekly basis.
Okay, quite interesting. Thank you so much for making it very clear to us that the government is actually doing a lot to empower the youth. But we want to go on a quick break now. We'll be back, and when we return, we'll be asking about what is happening with the school feeding program during the lockdown, because that has raised a lot of controversy. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is still You.Gov, and I'm still privileged to have with me the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Job Creation and Youth Empowerment, Afolabi Imoukhuede. And you just talked about the fact that the school feeding program is not just about feeding children in schools alone, but also empowering those people that are in the farms, in the local communities. The father is in the farm, the mother is the cook, and all that. So now that, okay, we still have farms, we still have women cooking, but who are those eating the food?
So my understanding, and let me make a very quick and open disclaimer that I'm not in any way, I don't oversight the school feeding program, and also now let's remember that the president has also set up a new ministry to oversight the social investment program, and they've taken full control of the social investment program. So, so the ministry would actually be the best guest to answer specifics.
So
but what I do know
about that ministry
is the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management and Social Development. Yes. Okay. Now, but what I do know about what they call, what is now named the Modified Homegrown School Feeding Program as a response to the pandemic. Because let's remember, what I shared earlier before the break was to show us that even when there was no pandemic, we knew there were poor people amongst us. So we started making arrangements on how do we get these poor people, how do we improve their lives, how do we get them out of extreme poverty through these programs. Now, a pandemic now hits. This pandemic has hit, everybody has been impacted. The rich, the poor, the middle, everybody. But of course, the worst hit will be the poor. Right? So what does it mean? In a country, our own response, therefore, since we're not a rich country, like I said, was to build on what we have been doing in social investment, catering for the poor, because we know they are also going to be the worst hit. So we ensured that Mr. President directed that they should continue as normal. So, for example, payments that were being made to the cash transfer, people, the conditional cash transfer, even directed, pay them 2 months in advance. Don't say this is July, for example, and you say pay them maybe August and September in advance, that kind of a thing. Pay them 2 months in advance. Empower continue to pay them, even though they are not going to school, because let's remember with the Empower program, the beneficiaries who are watching me, they know that I always say it is to earn, you earn it, not steal it.
Okay.
And if you don't go to school, or you don't go to your health center, or you don't go to your farms, you cannot earn it, you are stealing. So even though those in schools, yes, the health centers still have work and they are very busy, and I commend them because they are actually helping the primary health centers with all these pandemic issues. But even those not going to school, that ideally you should say you stop the stipends, right? The president directed continue to pay them even though they are not going to school. The school feeding then, my understanding of it being modified was, especially in the 3 states that had the initial lockdown, Lagos, Ogun, and FCT, was because the farms are still there, continue to buy the food from the farmers.
And then who eats the food?
And so I'm coming. Because the women are still there who normally cook the food, they didn't pay them to cook this time around, but they paid them to aggregate. So in other words, that's my understanding. I don't have full details. They are the best. But what I understood was they called the same cooks who normally would have cooked for maybe in this community now, Oregon community, maybe hypothetically, this cook used to cook for 100 children in this school. They then called and said, okay, come. We would buy the food, the food stuff. Now package the food stuff for these 100 children in a way that we would then call the parents of the 100 children to come to a building like yours and give them that food. They call it take-home ration. So that's what happened. So the money now that should have gone for you, the cook, to cook the food, we are paying you now for a new service. And what's that new service? Repackage the food. How much ration? Yes. How much ration would you have used to cook for this child per day? Now I want you to measure the ration for a month. And that's how you found that in some states, I think Lagos inclusive, they got like 5 kg rice, and then some onions, some cooking, whatever. So that's what it is. That's why they call it modified, pending when. But the essence was beyond the food for the child, because of this extended value chain, the farmers and the cooks. We wanted to ensure that they still have a livelihood.
But what about palliatives? Okay, you've answered a bit of palliatives, but before, I would still come back to that because it's what's the Nigerian on the road want to hear about.
So you see, we are a country that we like new words and buzzwords.
Exactly, because now, this word is really buzzing.
Yeah, so palliatives is not the new buzzword, and palliatives is what you give. Obviously, we all know what palliatives is. Okay, I'm helping you. It's like we are reawakening it. It was the same word I was using in 2012 during Occupy Nigeria, when the president then said, I'll give you palliative. So we understand what palliative is, but that's what I'm saying. Everybody is expecting, these palliative as the other countries of the world have done. I'm not in a position to say why or why not, but I do know that the Ministry of Finance and everyone has been saying the reality. But let's also remember that at least the civil servants earn their pay.
What about the private sector?
Well, so now you just heard, I just heard as well, yesterday after the issue of the private teachers, the private school teachers came up, that I'm told that the federal government is now in conversations with the Association of Private School Owners to at least be able to extend the helping hand to those private schools to pay their private teachers. So those are the challenges you see. I mean, perhaps, like I said, because we are not the rich country that would have just done a blanket decision, a blanket approach. We're having to do it, case by case now. Now that's the only reason why we had to open the economy, albeit in a gradual phase, earlier than we would have loved to. Because, I mean, you can't explain why, with numbers somewhat rising, the economy is still being allowed, to run.
People would rather face the virus.
We'd rather face the virus than die of hunger, than die of starvation, than die of poverty. So that's the reality. So these are the things that we are managing, and I think the message really is for everyone. I mean, we all must just take full ownership and take full responsibility and try to live responsibly within the constraints that we have. But suffice to say that what has been is what you now may refer to as palliatives. I mean, if you say Empower beneficiaries are earning their stipends even continuously, yes, but remember, it will be palliatives to the teach guys who yet are not going to school, but they're earning. But the health guys are still going to work. So you usually call that palliative. That's their stipend now.
So finally, you talked about the fact that some of these Empower outlets, you can find them in local governments.
Yeah.
Just a word on that before we wrap up.
So typically the way it is because, again, the local government are always the closest to us. And I think one of the lessons that this whole pandemic should also teach us and should help us in readdressing our governance is the need to empower our local government. The need for our local government to become to become real functioning, the need for us to have initiative, what you call innovation in governance at local government. But that's what we did, because you want to also have this reach, to real beneficiaries. We came down to the local government level, worked with the National Orientation Agency in every 774 local governments in Nigeria and ensured that our distribution to states was per local government per state, not just per state. And we didn't also leave it at the hands of the state. We actually did once we made the selection, we did the selection per local government per state, and we sent it to the states to deploy them to the appropriate places of primary assignment in every local government. And that's why I said, if you want to know an Empower volunteer now, walk into any public school when the school's open, or walk into any public health center, or walk into any agric farm in Agege or several local governments where we have the government agric farms, and ask for them. They would be there. No state has less than 10,000. Some in Lagos, for example, Lagos has about 14,000 Empower volunteers in Lagos. And so that's also, you also see the response of Mr. President with this 774,000
jobs, trying to create generated a bit of controversy.
So again, that's why it's also 774,000, trying to bring it down to local government level, 1,000 per local government, ensure that, because again, the jobs are not skilled jobs. The jobs are basically community maintenance, drainage works, special works, and they are also not, I think it's also important to let Nigerians know that it's not a permanent job. It's just a type of, that's why you call that one will be properly called a palliative, because it's only for 3 months in the first instance. It may get extended, but it's only for 3 months. So I think, so when you look at that, for example, and you also look at the vote, I mean, the Minister of Finance did say 60 billion was budgeted for that. So if you just do a simple math, that 20,000 each one would earn, times 774,000 times 3 months, it already comes to about 45 million thereabout. So again, sometimes when we also hear the numbers, if you don't take the pain to try to divide it, to make it granular, you may just think, it's some horrendous, humongous amount. I mean, it was the same issue I faced with Empower. We have 200,000 of them, times 30,000 a month, that's 6 billion. So when you say, when the government says, I've spent 6 billion, you're like, what are they saying? You just need to break it down, but what has also happened is, yes, Nigerians could also say, no, lie, but that's why we have brought them close to every one of us, and you can find them anywhere. And the book I released some weeks ago also has testimonies of some of the beneficiaries in the book who have talked about how the program has impacted their lives in a short time of 2.5 years.
Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
Very interesting conversation. And like I said earlier, remember, the youth can also get involved in governance. That is why you should keep talking. And you heard what Afolabi Imoukhuede said about the fact that palliatives is not just for you to sit at home and expect palliatives. There are people that are receiving because they were actually enrolled in some programs that you'll be getting more information about. And we want to say a special thank you for making our time to come here on You.Gov. So let's just take a look at your book, although we are out of time. This book is on afterthoughts, and I'm very sure that you can get this book anywhere. But this is the You.Gov, and we have some more tidbits for you. Stay with us. Well, that's what you can take this week on You.Gov. It was indeed a very interesting conversation, one that I love so much because we keep hearing of figures, we keep hearing of palliatives and different buzzwords being thrown around. But now you heard that some things are actually going on. People that were said to be in school feeding and all that should be very controversial issue, really. But we got insights into that discourse here on You.Gov. We'd like you to join our conversation by using our hashtag You.Gov, hashtag LoveWorldPlus, and we would like you to send comments to the number showing on your screen. I want to hear from you. I want to keep this conversation going. We want to know more about what the government is doing. It's all about transparency. God bless Nigeria. From me, it's bye for now.